Welcome to another episode of GSP, the Goodsugar podcast. I am Ralph Sutton. With me, as always, Marcus Antebi. Mark is constantly changing where he is. Today looks like you're home. Am I right, Marcus?
You know, just like Saddam Hussein when he was moving bunkers, you know, you never knew where he was. That's my thing. I can't.
Stick and move. We're doing a little different this week. We're jumping into the guest right away. We're bringing her on board. Founder of Get Loved Up Community and Yoga School, host of the Get Loved Up podcast, author of Let Your Fears Make You Fierce. We're welcome Koya Webb at Koya Webb as well. How are you? Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Man, you guys got me cracking up already. What is this?
I would say before, in the interest of pulling back the curtain, right before the show started, it turned into a meet and greet with Marcus's wife and Koya. I don't even know what was going on at that point, if I'm being honest with you.
We were doing a traditional yoga introduction, good human beings talking. What are we just going to be all business?
I don't know. It just struck me a little bit. I don't know. I was confused by it. So I want to get right into a little bit about you that I do my research, tertiary research as well as I can. I find it that this is the story very often. You are very much you're yoga, you're a motivation speaker. You're helping people find their inner selves, their better selves. And it almost always comes from when somebody had a life-altering moment in their lives. And for you, you started out as a track and field athlete en route to become an Olympic athlete, had an injury, and then it's a 180 from there, and somebody suggested yoga. Am I right?
You're right. You got it.
So what was that like? I mean, I'm sure, I have to imagine your mindset changed because track and field, it's competitive. It's super much. I got to be me, be better than everybody else. Yoga is not that mentality at all.
Yeah, it's completely different. Think of Superman flying through the air and then just getting hit with a meteor ball of kryptonite. That's how it felt. And, 1 minute you're like on top of the world and you're competing and you're winning, and I was just talking on my podcast the other day and I realized the reason I enjoy winning so much because people would hug me and love me, specifically my parents. And so I attached love to success in athletics. And so, but then when I found yoga, it was like, I was able to connect spiritually and I was able to learn I need to take better care of myself and not run myself in the ground for success and love. So it was a 360 for sure.
Yeah, it had to be crazy. Do you remember very vividly the moment where it was like, oh, I am no longer going down this path. I am no longer competing?
Oh, no. I think I still think about competing to this day. I think when it's in your blood, and I think I was listening to one of your shows where you were talking about how you were, running and getting your mile times down. Mm-hmm. I literally, after the pandemic, just start tracking my miles. I'm at an 11-minute mile, which, that's super, that's not that fast for a track person, but it's decent when you've been out for a time. Right. So I get excited about it. I don't know if I've ever given up the dream, to be honest.
I just had my second time doing 6 miles in under an hour, which is under a 10-minute mile. And for me, it's amazing that I can do that. I was doing 15-minute miles not that long ago. So For me to be able to do that, it really is. It's also because I'm not carrying around the small child in my weight that I used to carry around. So the fact that that's gone feels great, right? Also, I have a couple of things I want to touch on, and then we'll get into some other stuff with Marcus as well, being that you're both so yoga passionate and both vegan, I believe.
Hey, don't accuse me.
All right, I don't know how that meant, but sure. So somehow you've gotten a lot of celebrity clients on your roster as well. Stevie Wonder, India Arie, P. Diddy. How the hell did that happen? Who introduced who to who, and how does that happen?
Every time it happened completely out of the blue. It was never my intention. Maybe it should be now or it should have been. But I remember when I got the call about, Stevie Wonder, who is to this day one of my favorite clients, just because I learned so much about dedication and being legendary and just so inspired beyond words. But I remember I was in Florida, not even in LA. I was in Florida on the beach, just, having some downtime because I believe in balance. And, I got this call and I had no idea I had no idea who it was. They were like, we have a really special project. You're not going to want to miss this. You're going to, and I had no idea. So I got flown back to LA, again, not knowing, but being open, which is kind of how my whole life unfolded, just being open to infinite possibilities. So I was like, oh, this sounds cool and exciting. Why not take an adventure and see who it is? So when I walked in the room and I saw Steve, I was just like,
that's crazy. But is it you went, are you his yogi? Is that what you do with him?
I'm a holistic health coach,
Okay.
So I do the mental, the spiritual, physical, and nutritional. So mostly I am not a chef, by the way. So at the end of the day, I'm like a Rachel Ray, right? But not that popular. But it's like, I love the kitchen. I love the food. I love talking, and I make really delicious food, but I'm not a chef. So eventually I had to, I had a lot of imposter syndrome when I was in this vibration, because I would say, y'all, I am not a chef. So I get in these kitchen with these chefs, and they're like, let me see your knife skills. And I'm like, it was so bad. But I was like, it tastes good, but I don't have any knife skills. I don't have any presentation skills.
Right.
It's just good. So it was very humbling. But from the point of like making healthy food for people, making food that tastes good, that's healthy, that's my jam. And I was good at it. And so people hired me.
It's funny. One of my good friends who launched a gluten-free vegan product line and was very successful, but then she let it go because she went back into acting. She's an actress named Jennifer Esposito. Her gluten-free bagels and gluten-free chocolate chip cookies were better than anything I've ever had in any other store in that gluten-free space. And she had no training. She just figured it out on her own because she missed those foods. So she figured out how to make a nutritional version of a gluten-free product. And her gluten-free product killed every other gluten-free bakery in New York. And she had no training whatsoever.
I think that's where it comes from. It comes from passion for me. Like, I'm a vegan, but I'm also an athlete. So it's like I had every type of protein you could ever think, because, I want to make sure I'm getting my healthy levels of protein, carbohydrates, and fat, and mostly protein was what I was missing. So I tasted all these proteins, and then I created my own, and people were like, oh my goodness, tastes better than it ever has. But are you a formulator? I was like, well, I formulated this because I tasted like 30 brands for the last 20 years. And I found out what I liked and what I didn't. So I think passion can take you a long way when it comes to food.
I think with everything, I think passion, it's essential. But now, because I have been trying with Marcus's push to do more yoga, right? I've definitely been doing it. I have a harder time with the spiritual side of it. I'm just too analytical. That's just who I am. And I just had a very hard time. I'm questioning when you go back to that transitional phase, when someone suggests yoga and you're getting into yoga, was there a skeptic side of Koya that was like, fuck this, I'm not into this at all? Or did it speak to you right away?
Oh, it spoke to me right away. So I'm raised Southern Baptist, girl from Tennessee. So,
Wow, yoga is evil.
So that part. So that's the catch-22. So here I am, Southern Baptist girl. And, I'm suggested try yoga. And all I'm thinking is this picture of Buddha, like, are these little people with white on, with very little clothing on a wall somewhere that someone's bowing down to. And I'm like, I'm not into that, And so the teacher was like, no, it's just stretching. Of course, we know it's deeper than that, but it's what I felt. It's the spiritual energy. And so when it comes to spirituality, I work with a lot of people who are atheists. The spiritual center that I go to is trans-denominational. So we invite in, no matter what denomination you're from, it's about more spirituality than religiosity. So that concept is more about energetics. So when I went into this yoga class, I was trying to do all the poses. Of course, I didn't look like anybody in the room. I wasn't comfortable because I was a tight athlete and my back hurt. So I was miserable. The teacher came to me and she was like, just take a breath. And I took a breath and I felt chills in my body. And I'm like, I felt a yes, a full body orgasmic yes. And I kept just breathing and I kept following that yes. And I stopped trying to do all the hard poses. And eventually in a year, not like 3 days or a week, which some people try things for a week and day and they're over it. After a year, I healed my body and I ended up being ranked 13th in the nation in the heptathlon. So it did something.
Wow, your story is enviably easier than my story into yoga. I had to lock myself in a yoga box for several months and sip air and water through a straw until I figured out what good it would do for me.
That's a very bizarre training method.
Yeah.
You know what's funny is that I also was shocked to learn that you were not, as you're on this path of a high-end athlete, but you weren't necessarily healthy or flexible at all, really, right? And you learned more about that you were making mistakes, that you would think someone at your level wouldn't know that, would know better, if that makes any sense.
Right. I mean, not all athletes know balance, and depending on what athlete, you might be flexible, but in a certain type of way. So my back bends were flexible because I did high jump, right? Mm-hmm. But I couldn't touch my toes because my hamstrings were tight because I ran so much and I lifted heavy weights. So whereas in yoga, you have 360 flexibility. So I'm working on my flexibility from head to toe. I'm working on my breath work, which makes the body alkaline. So you get rid of lactic acid easier. So there's so many benefits of yoga that it is insane. I think every single person in the world should at least try yoga and have the gift of yoga because it's such an amazing thing, whether you're an athlete or mom or dad or a contractor.
You're making Marcus so happy, by the way. It's hilarious. I also
it's funny because I think of silly things like if she spoke in the same nonsense tone as I do, she would have said at the end of that, and remember, I get 1 penny every time someone takes a deep breath. Like she has some kind of thing to promote by teaching the yoga. And what I think is really important is that people recognize that the confusion in the modern world, it's not just the West anymore because of how knowledge really has jumped over all the borders. Even in the East, they have the Western problems. And they used to call problems, they used to say the Western thinking. It's not Western thinking anymore, it's universal. And so one of the big problems with yoga is that it's been branded a certain way culturally because that's how the modern person saw it. But it's not, what yoga is not something exclusive to India and the Far East. The concept of it actually is more mental than it is astral, spiritual, universal. At first, it could be anything you want. It could be getting in touch with the divine, but the general concept of yoga is a mental concept. It's first and foremost, it's self-help.
Right.
The second thing that it has to be is a person is trying to learn how to relax the body, relax the mind, so that they can get out of the constant state of anxiety, all the negative thinking, all the disruptive behaviors. It's very, very deep because it's more of a mental process first than anything else. You could market it any way you want, but it shouldn't be. It really should be marketed as a very thorough system for one to liberate themselves from their own mental suffering.
It's a lot longer than yoga, by the way, if you were to say that.
Yeah, well, it is. And by the way,
let me ask this, by the way, to both of you.
Yoga's been marketed great because it's reached millions and millions of people. So it's marketed very well.
The thought that you said, Koya, at the beginning, and I felt that way, there is a stigma or a connotation associated with the word yoga. Would you be opposed, either of you, to changing that name for people like me who think about it as, like you said, white sheet guys on the wall with long gray beards and, dinging chalices or whatever? Maybe if it had a different name, it would reach more people. Or if you
How about you like the word Tai Chi?
No, I don't. I don't like
How
either
about
of them.
Kung Fu?
That I like because I like.
Okay, we'll use that.
You're also, by the way, you just mentioned it off air again. You got very into growing your own food during the pandemic. Is that something you were doing beforehand, or you learned it during the pandemic?
Well, I mean, I'm from the country. So my parents, we had a garden, and so we grew food. I grew food growing up, actually, but I hadn't since college and since being in school and since living on my own. So I started with sprouts on my counter. And then I ended up getting like a hydroponic gardening system in my house. But yeah, I just started with 25-cent sprouts on my counter.
And now how many different things are growing in your house?
32 different herbs.
I got some big questions, Koya. Big questions. I had to size you up at first, and man, am I blown away? I'm so impressed. I can't believe it. I can't believe how many shapes and sizes enlightened people are coming in these days. It's just amazing. Can I ask you some silly yoga questions?
Ask me some silly yoga questions.
Okay. How do you spell yoga?
He's the best. He's really great. Okay. Ultimately, I take all this stuff as nonsense. So I'm just being
nonsense, but you do it all. So you may take it as nonsense.
Listen, it took me years. My origin in yoga began truthfully in my getting sober at age 15. By the way, congratulate me.
I saw the picture. Yeah.
Today I'm 36 years sober.
Congratulations.
And yoga, by the way, how do you spell yoga? Love.
I was going to say, let's go and have a beer to celebrate your sobriety.
It's a good T-shirt, Koya. Good T-shirt. We should make a T-shirt that says, step 11 in the 12-step program is we sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God or higher power. And that was something I took very seriously. I got sober when I was 15. I really wanted to stay sober. And it was a very elusive beast, figuring out meditation, having such a hyperactive mind, obsessive, compulsive, and addiction. So I could say I wasted a lot of time. And the truth is, when I started reading Aboriginal from Australia philosophy, it directed me to the yoga practice. I started to understand because they looked a lot alike, where the Aboriginals had no real philosophy that I could follow because they were beyond enlightened people before they were decimated.
Are these your silly questions for Koya? Because they don't sound like them.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to pontificate. Let me get back in. Anyway, all right. I appreciate it. He helps me sometimes. I get lost. All right.
Shocking.
First question I would ask you is, what yoga do you appreciate the most? Different styles. Are you an Ashtanga person? 26 and 2? Is it Satchidananda? What's your style that you love the most?
All right. I got two answers for that. I love Ashtanga. I got my first certification and I'm a 500-hour certified Ashtanga teacher and practitioner. So that was my first love. I mean, I did regular, again, stretchy yoga, which wasn't a full practice in college, but when I got my certification, it was in Ashtanga. Now I like to teach Vinyasa flow because I feel like it's more accessible to more people. I like to break down the modifications and I like to kind of dance and have fun in my classes. So those are
you must know Laruga from Purple Valley, right? Do you know?
Absolutely. I absolutely love her.
Yeah. I get so inspired. I would say in Ashtanga, a great teacher that I'm fortunate enough to live around the corner from. You know who Eddie Stern is?
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. We're in the same camp. Where are you again? I'm sorry.
Did we change the show to the name-dropping yoga teacher show? Is that what this is?
Marina Dora.
All right. Okay. Thank you. He's very helpful, by the way. He keeps me on track. All right. What's your favorite posture?
My favorite posture? Oh, goodness. Shavasana.
I was going to say, I thought you said, I was going to say rigatoni, and then I realized you said posture.
No, she's saying that dead body pose is her favorite pose. I was hoping she was going to say the easy ones.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
What's your favorite non-shavasana posture?
Let's go back to my third favorite yoga type, which is yin yoga. Okay, non-shavasana yoga. I love Hanumanasana. I love, split.
I know what it is. It's a forward split. How is your hold on a second. Oh, man.
Urdhva bow pose, wheel pose, any back bend I like yoga.
If you spent your whole life doing nothing else but contemplating.
Can I ask a question
yoga,
to both of you on this? I'm curious because
yes.
I don't know what any of these words are, so I'm just going to jump in here. The fact that inherently there are certain poses, not necessarily poses, but positions that women can do that men can't. You see that all the time on TikTok, like put your head against the wall and lift, and girls can do it and guys can't. Are there certain yoga positions that men can't do that women can, and vice versa, or no?
Yes, but that would be another show.
Okay, fair enough. Was that a sexual term? I think I don't even know.
Oh wow, he has a show. Ralph has a show called Sex, Drugs, and Rock and Roll. If we want to discuss that, I've never been on the show personally, but Ralph, it's a complete and total myth because, there might be postures that are not recommended, and there might be times of the month where certain postures are recommended. But I've seen both male and female do every posture that is considered, that's out there. I've never seen any posture that is restricted just to male or female. That's my answer.
I was just curious. I didn't know. I just listening to both of you talk words that I've never heard before. I'm just trying to hypothesize here.
And I just have to throw this in there. Like the benefits of yoga are far beyond the postures. It actually starts with the breath. So everyone can do that. Even if you're paralyzed, like starting with the breath and allowing that to energize your body. That's where it's at.
How long have you been vegan, Koya?
16 years.
Wow, it's a long time as well. Also, by the way, what I did like is that besides being a yogi and a mindful person and all these other nice things to work with people, you take it beyond that, where you work with not only but social injustices, you focus on global warming, you have bigger picture mentality. So not just fix me, it's fix me and what's around me, which is, you don't hear that as much.
Thank you. I think a lot of people, they get caught up with the small part of yoga, but yoga actually means oneness and unity. And so I created the community Get Loved Up, and it's focused on self-love, oneness, and eco-friendly living, because once you put them together in that order, you have a healthy society. You have a holistic society and holistic health. But one, you have to focus on yourself first and most in order to be healthy enough to help others. And then coming together, we have to have conversations and communication so we can make sure we're taking care of Mother Earth. So it's actually a full program. It's 8 limbs of yoga, but we usually just talk about a couple.
All right. Is that oneness that you focus on why you only follow one person on Instagram?
Ralph, she said
that's for my mental health.
which I'll translate what she's saying in yoga.
No, I got what she's saying.
If you practice yoga, you could be a nice person.
I just was surprised. She has like a ton of followers on Instagram, and she follows one person.
That's actually really good branding.
Health. It's called healthy boundaries.
It's actually really good branding. If she followed no persons, people would say it was a glitch or a thing, and more than one, she's attached.
Yeah, I was surprised by that. It's like, wow, one person. Good.
Who's the one person? Can you please check? That's the most important thing.
I forgot. I think it was like a yoga studio. I forgot who it was that the one person you followed.
Perfect.
It wasn't. It might have been like the Get Loved Up page or something.
Koya, last yoga question. What is this thing called enlightenment?
Ooh, enlightenment. Such a good word. Enlightenment is just the awareness of who you truly are, and I feel like truly we're spiritual beings having a human experience. And a lot of times people think we're humans that can or cannot be spiritual, but we're actually spiritual beings having this human experience. So
it looks like Marcus is about to have some sort of weird experience based on that.
No, listen, you know what? Unlike you, I'm paying attention because someone might actually give me the answer right there. I don't want to miss that because it was pretty good. Holy smokes. I have so many questions to ask after that.
And when you say that, are you then going to go on a 10-minute diatribe about yourself?
No, I can't because you're here.
Go ahead, ask your questions, Marcus.
I got distracted.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
I'm sorry. You throw me off. I'm
going to talk a little bit about I listened to a little bit of the Get Loved Up podcast. I was away yesterday, went on this little glamping excursion in the Governor's Island with this girl that I've been kind of hanging out with.
What the hell is glamping? What does that mean?
Glamping is like upscale camping. You never heard that term? It's like
glamping?
Yeah. So like,
oh my God.
Wimps like me that don't want to rough it, but we want to go outside. It's like camping, but you still got running water and you don't have to.
It's like a riddle.
You don't have to shit in the woods. You get an actual bathroom. That's what it's really. It's like a nice experience. And she looked at, I'm the neophyte here. I don't know this landscape anywhere near as well as Marcus or you, Koya. But the girl I was with was like, holy shit, she spoke with Mel Robbins. And so that must have, I saw bits and pieces. She brought you to tears. That's a big woman in this space as well. That had to mean a lot to you, I'm imagining.
Oh, yeah. I love Mel and her ability to like connect with people and just being there with her and just having that conversation. We went deep and I'm not afraid to just be real and vulnerable. And she did a great job of bringing it out.
How you been enjoying doing the podcast?
I've been loving it. I love having these deeper conversations. I truly believe we can heal humanity just by having conversations, especially with people that don't identify with the same things we identify, don't think like we think. I think that's one of the keys.
I'm such an advocate. Like I just literally was having this conversation today that someone said they only like to bring people on whom they agree with their values. I'm like, that's a mistake. You never know how you might learn something from someone who's contrarian to your every existence. You may not agree with anything they're saying as a person.
It's like Fox News. Were you talking?
You never
to
know. I mean, I do. By the way, I hate to get political on shows, but that's why I watch Fox News, because I always feel like if they said something I agree with, it's probably true. You know what I mean? If that's something that they have to reluctantly admit, you know, that means that something good is happening. That's all how I look at it.
Yeah.
Marcus, ask your questions. You said you had some more yoga
You know what? I did not. I made that up. I didn't actually have
strange.
questions.
You're a
I
strange man,
no,
Marcus.
listen, man. I'm not attached to these things. You know what I'm saying?
The questions? Jesus Christ. All right. Let me ask you this. So
Koya, listen, when you bring yoga people on the show, we're going to be in a yoga state of mind.
you're just going to say om to each other for 45 minutes?
No,
How are we going to
see, you know what? If there's a terminology for people who are bigoted against yoga people, you are it.
I'm doing yoga.
Give us what's that?
I'm doing yoga 3 times a week.
You're doing it reluctantly. You have like a ham sandwich in your hand while you're like.
By the way, Koya, I ran for a year miserable, just kept doing it. And it wasn't until a year in that I finally said, you know what? I think I can identify as a runner now, right? It took me a year. It took you a year to like yoga. So what's the big deal if I'm 6 months in and I'm still not that into it, but I keep going? Give me props. Don't shit on me, Marcus.
You're not going fast enough. God damn it. Get that enlightenment thing right now.
Let me ask you this. This is a touchy question, Koya, and I hope you don't get offended by this question. You seem like a pretty easygoing person, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
Oh, by the way, if he says that, there's a 90% chance your booker is going to call us up and say,
No,
do
I
not
don't
air
think
the
so.
show.
I think it's a nice.
He's like chased off like 20 people off the show.
A lot of what you talk about is beautiful messaging. You know, self-love, mindfulness. You know, all these other things, social injustice, all beautiful messages. 100% on board with all of it, right? And I probably can say I understand why you do it, but do you feel that you aren't going to reach people that may really need your message when you charge $500 an hour for a one-on-one session? And I just mean that, you know, as honestly as possible. I get why you do it, but if you had like some sort of sliding scale for people that can't afford $500 an hour, I'm just curious. And I hope I don't offend you by asking that question.
Oh,
but
no.
I think
Very
it's a
Barbara
legitimate
Walters
question.
of you. Very Barbara Walters of you.
I think it's a legitimate question.
It's really important. It's really important for you to get an answer to the question, because the thing is, people value, you know, if anyone else has a number, it's not questioned, right? It's like when you question someone's number, ask yourself, are you questioning their value? Because if you look at it on social media, free information, on podcast, free information, this show, free information, helping people for free all the time. But there comes a point, and this is what I teach in my yoga teacher training. I have part of my yoga teacher training is called wellness entrepreneurship. There comes a point in your life where you have to value your time. It doesn't mean you don't give to people. I'm a philanthropist. I love to give things. I teach kids. I teach older adults all my life. And I will always make myself available to those in need. But when it comes to, you know, charging my worth and my value, the number should be higher because of the education. I get a new certification every single year. Wow. You know, I have 500 hours, you know, and I give scholarships all the time. So yes, my hourly rate is high, but I do give a lot. So I think it's important for people to value themselves and have rates that are.
I can say I love that answer. I have no arguments with that answer. Great answer.
I have a lot of friends in yoga, and they put themselves out of the yoga business because they were in poverty. You know, if a yoga teacher lives in a city in Brooklyn, in New York, where yoga is really needed, they have overhead, they have an expense. Obviously, if your yoga teacher is driving around a Lamborghini or 75 Rolls Royces, then you might want to.
There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that.
I wouldn't say it's nothing wrong with it. I would just say make a decision on what you want from your teacher and where you think you're going. It's a choice of the student. I would never judge it. I actually would never judge it. I know a lot of people in yoga, they do a lot of different things. What I would say is, when it comes for me and my practice and what I'm looking for, first of all, I gratefully understand if a yoga teacher needs to get paid and what their value is. And if I have the money, I'm glad to share it with them. But also, a yoga teacher to me at a certain point is not teaching me postures. They're helping me understand much deeper things about my happiness and my consciousness. And the way that they live their life is very important to me to determine whether or not that person is the right.
So you're saying if
role
you have a
model.
very flashy guy and you're not a flashy guy, you're not going to look for those traits in that teacher.
No, they'll be my friend. I'm not going to. I'm not paying for their beach house. They'll be my best friend. I'll laugh with them.
I have two last questions. You say you get a certification every year. Do you have what you want to do next? What the next certification is?
Let's see. That's a good question. What is my next certificate? I need to finish getting my scuba diving certification.
I was just gonna say
that's
scuba.
Cool. I did. I went in a pool once. I scubaed in a pool. That's the first step, and then you go to the open water.
Koya,
and
I recommend so highly. First of all, it's not hubris, dangerous nonsense. It's very controlled. It's very safe.
Well, I got it. I just didn't get my papers. I went in
my God.
underwater.
It's the greatest meditation space on the planet.
Can I ask you both this question? Is it poo-pooed on? Because I've seen it come out, but it doesn't seem to be taking off too much. The full face glass scuba where you can talk to other people. Is that not popular? It's only the nose one? I'm serious. I've seen it.
I haven't done it.
It's called full face scuba.
I can answer for you.
Okay.
Every sport has let me use the right words. Every sport has the weekend warrior that shows up that has the most ridiculous, craziest, expensive inventions that they buy because they don't know what's actually going on. When I was in skydiving for 13 years, there was always somebody that pulls up. I've never seen that. It hasn't taken over the sport.
Taken off. I don't know why, but I like the idea of being able to talk to someone underwater.
The more complex the equipment you bring underwater with you, the more potential danger.
Fair enough.
So the idea is, what am I going down there to do? I can talk to you for hours on the boat ride. I'm going down there to be silent and look.
Okay,
for God's
fair
sakes.
Enough. So now tell us a little bit about the Get Loved Up community and yoga school and all of that, and then we'll wrap it up. We don't want to take up too much of your time.
Absolutely. I mean, the yoga school is for anyone, especially you, Ralph. I'm going to give you a scholarship to my 100 hour. It's just the intro. You're not certified to be a teacher, but I want to gift that to you. So you just get in and you understand like the science behind the breath work, the yoga, the meditation. So when you understand, especially with your more analytical mind, like, oh my goodness, that's why I feel so good when I take 3 deep breaths. You're going to be more into it. So basically, it's a place where people can just dive deeper and understand, why do those posture work? It's not just about trying to get likes on your deep back bend. It's actually because when you move the body and the breath and you get that blood flow, it's healing, it's alkalizing the body, it's just releasing the happy hormones. It's doing all the things, right? And then if you want to put a little strength in there, which some people frown on, but I'm the kind of person, I invite it all in. I'm like, look, these things are here to help us and, propel us to the next level. And then for people who want to get certified, who want to teach meditation, yoga, breathwork, or just wellness, I have 200 hour, 300 hour, all the way up to 500 hours of education where a person can go deeper into mind movies and intentions and chakras. And it's a lot of fun. And then the Get Loved Up community is where we hang out. Even if you're not interested in being a yoga teacher, we hang out and basically we hold space for each other. We hold space as a safe, inclusive place for you to have problems, talk about those problems, and work on healing together.
Well, it's funny. I would DM you on Instagram for that scholarship, but hell knows you're never going to follow me back, so you won't see the message.
You can DM me and I'll see the message whether I follow you or not. You can also email me.
I'm only kidding.
Can at some point, no attachments, at some point in the far-reaching future, can you and I just come back on this show and geek out on yoga for 1 hour together for fun?
Yeah, and I probably shouldn't be on that call.
No, you know what?
Absolutely.
Ralph, we're talking about stuff here that, I'm just afraid it's gonna either
you do
upset you
a
or
bonus
change you
episode
too much.
of the show where you two geek out on yoga. I condone that.
I think Ralph would like it, to be honest. The way I go deep, I think he'd be over there higher than a kite.
I like it. All right, so you can follow Koya Webb at Koya Webb on Instagram, and I think it's koyawebb.com as well, if I'm not mistaken.
You got it.
It is the Get Loved Up community. The Get Loved Up podcast can be found anywhere on iTunes and everywhere else you might listen to a podcast. And her book, Let Your Fears Make You Fierce, which came out a couple years ago, is out now as well. Thank you so much, Koya. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so
Did we
much
forget
fun.
anything else you want to plug or no?
No, I just want to say, like, even if this was a little bit much, the book, Let Your Fears Make You Fears, it's also on Audible, and it's on audio, and just like listening to it and just seeing like some of my personal story and how I, healed from a lot of trauma that I experienced in my life. I also attest that to yoga. So I just wanted to say that because a lot of people are going through fear and mental health things right now. So
hell knows the world is going through that right now for various reasons. Marcus, we did a whole 40 minutes here, so I'm going to say quickly, follow me ever at I Am Ralph Sutton. My other podcast, the SDR Show, Sex, Drugs, and Rock and Roll, comes out twice a week. We just had Robbie Krieger, The Doors, on. He never does podcasts, which is really cool that he came on the show. And Marcus, the Goodsugar brick and mortar is coming very soon, correct?
I have nothing to endorse except
you never do.
Except the chakras. You know what? I really am a big fan of the chakras. I'm being paid by a corporate sponsor to plug the chakras.
All right. Sounds fascinating. Thank you so much, Koya. And we'll see you next week on the Good Sugar podcast. Thank you.